Bleh. Oh, goodness gracious, man. This idea makes me nauseous. But we gotta talk about it. I know if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, you saw the title of this video, you saw the thumbnail of this video, and maybe you wanted to beat the brakes off of me for making a commentary about it, but let me be clear. I'm not saying this is a move that Canadiens fans are going to like. But this could be a move that may be done if the Montreal Canadiens want to take advantage of a team in need. Could the Montreal Canadiens acquire Chris Kreider out of the Anaheim Ducks? Obviously, Canadiens fans are familiar with Kreider because of his days with the New York Rangers. He spent a long time in New York, maxing out as a 70-plus point winger who had 52 goals in one of those many seasons. However, Canadiens fans don't care about Kreider and his 50 goals and whatever. They care about the fact that this was the guy that essentially robbed the Montreal Canadiens from going deeper in the 2014 Stanley Cup Playoffs. He fell on a breakaway, he went skate first into Carey Price, and you can say that it was a moment where Carey Price was never, ever the same. Now, sure, Carey Price did inevitably win some pretty meaningful hardware in the years to come, but that 2014 season was an opportunity where the Montreal Canadiens could have gone further had it not been for this dude. Anyways, when it comes to Chris Kreider and the Anaheim Ducks in 2026, maybe it's time to forgive and forget, because an article posted on HabsFanatics.com by Gabriel Sammy goes out there and articulates the idea on whether or not the Canadiens could trade for Kreider, and what they could receive alongside of Kreider if a trade were to be completed. As we have noted, Kreider is an Anaheim Duck. He's 35 years old, big winger, 6'3", 231, and he had scored 50 points in 75 games last year. That's not bad. In fact, that's pretty good for a guy who's literally in his mid-30s. However, Kreider is making $6.5 million a year for one more season. Who knows if this is the last year of his NHL career? But the Anaheim Ducks need to free up some money to sign Cutter Gauthier, a guy who supposedly is not going to take a cent less than Leo Carlson's $18 million per year. Because the Ducks only have $9 million in cap space, you could assume that guys like Kreider, guys like Vatrano, guys potentially like Alex Killorn could be on the market, which opens the door for a Montreal Canadiens team who may need some winger support to pounce and take advantage. This article is going to be linked in the description down below. It talks about the idea of Montreal getting Kreider. By taking on a contract like Kreider's, the Canadiens could also acquire a draft pick, according to David Pagnotta. As we know, the Ducks are in a difficult position because they only have $9 million in cap to sign their young star forward Cutter Gauthier, who is reportedly seeking around $15 million per season. Now, I'm guessing the number varies, but depends on the source, doesn't it? The Ducks need to clear cap space, and quickly. Anaheim is therefore believed to be willing to attach a second-round draft pick to move a large contract. This is where the Canadiens enter the picture. Kent Hughes has cap space, a valuable asset in a market this competitive, and it could prove useful. At 35 years old, Kreider still recorded 50 points last year. He remains an intriguing power forward, seemingly built for the NHL playoffs. This is what David Pagnotta said on the Sheet podcast with Jeff Merrick yesterday regarding the Ducks, Vatrano, Killorn, and Kreider. With 3 second-round picks in next year's draft, the Ducks may be willing to include one of those, maybe more, if they get desperate, in order to take on the full pop of these deals. So, Kreider is just the name that stands out to me the most because I would probably say that he is Do I want to say he's the best one, like, straight up? Obviously, it's not Vetrano. Vetrano just had a terrible year. I could understand if a team maybe wants to take some sort of a shot in the dark with this guy. He had 9 points in 50 games. You have Alex Killorn, who had 33 points in 82 games played, and then Chris Kreider, who had 50 points. So out of the guys that could be sent away because of this entire Cutter-Gauthier contract conundrum, I'd say that Chris Kreider is the best one of the bunch. So if Montreal potentially wants to dip their toes with the most skilled available option, by default, that is Chris Kreider. So take that how you will. Kreider could give Ken Hughes a rare chance to add a top 6 winger and a draft pick. He carries a $6.5 million cap hit, and his contract expires next summer. Do you think Ken Hughes could kill 2 birds with 1 stone here? He would add a valuable asset, a second-round draft pick, plus a top 6 power forward completely free. It's an interesting question. Now, I will say, second-round picks can also be seen as decently valuable on their own, too. We talk about the Vancouver Canucks and what they were getting for their players and the ones that they were selling off at the deadline last season. Connor Garland got a second and a third. Kiefer Sherwood got 2 seconds. If you have a guy like Chris Kreider in Montreal, essentially replacing the minutes of Brendan Gallagher, and then you take that second-round pick you got alongside of acquiring him and trade that for some more forward help too, you could legitimately bolster your team in a very good way come next trade deadline. Now, whether or not you feel like Chris Kreider is an appropriate name for the Montreal Canadiens to have on their team, that's an entirely other issue, and it really boils down to the ethical and sentimental connections that Canadiens fans will feel towards their team and towards Carey Price 12 years ago. Chris Kreider was essentially the devil in Montreal back in that playoff run. He was super effective, but he also was a guy that just did a little bit too much on the physical side of things when it came to Carey Price. He got taken out of that playoff run for the rest of the third round, and you just look at what happened with the Canadiens afterwards. It didn't really look all too good for the rest of the squad. If you go over to their goaltenders, you can see that Dustin Tokarski was forced to step in. He had a .916 save percentage, which admittedly is not bad. Like, you think about the numbers there, .916 and a .260 is actually pretty decent by today's standards, but Tokarski came in, he wasn't good enough to win the Canadiens the series. The New York Rangers made the Stanley Cup Finals, and then they lost to the LA Kings. So, all's well that ends well for a New York Rangers team that was able to get by the Montreal Canadiens due to a very unfortunate goaltending injury, with Chris Kreider being the guy who catalyzed that. But is 12 years enough for you to not necessarily forgive it, but to just acknowledge that it happened and say, okay, what happened 12 years ago is not going to affect my personal feelings today? I understand that I'm walking on eggshells. I'm walking on shards of glass. I'm getting tossed into a big pit of used needles like the Saw movies with this question, but I wanted to ask y'all here. Chris Kreider to the Canadiens, yay or nay? We have at least one article going out there and talking about how it could be a good idea. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Kreider and a second for potentially nothing, and bye.